Okay. Now the fun part. Make sure all this works. Okay, so according to YouTube, I'm live. So this is my first experience live streaming with YouTube. I used to stream on Twitch way back in the day. So just as a heads up, things might get weird. Yeah, let me know. Let me know how audio is, guys. Just I know there's a little delay between what I see in chat and my actual real time talking, but looks like so far we're okay. What's up? I know a live stream. It's so weird. I usually only do edited content, but my girlfriend's out of town, so normally I would be kind of half working on something and half doing stuff with her. She's not here, so I got all my work done yesterday. Let's live stream, right? Um, so I'm gonna wait a little bit. I have a couple things I want to go over. On the zebras, do you mean my zebra auto sinkless or my zebra plecos? Because if you mean my zebra plecos, there's a video about that. Um, and the short answer is, I was dumb and killed them all, and it hurts real bad because I know for certain now that I had two adult females, three adult males, and a young, looked like was most likely about to be a young adult female. And hello, I'll say some hellos in a sec. That I'm gonna try not to like. Most streamers tend to call out lots of people in chat. I don't want to do that unless I'm answering specifically a question from you guys. So, okay, so the short answer is this. As you guys know, I work a ton. I went from working slightly less to working a lot more. And I had got some advice that I wanted to try and follow from someone who breeds zebra plecos, which is that they didn't water change every week. They would let the water evaporate a little extra, but not too much. But more importantly, like they'd let it go a little while before they did a big water change to kind of simulate the dry season that happens in the wild. And then you do a big water change, like 60%, and you get that water coming in like 5 to 6 degrees lower. And this kind of mimics the rain. And that's usually what triggers zebra plecos to spawn. So I was doing this, but at the same time, I knew I had at least one female, and I was trying to fatten her up. So I was feeding a little extra bloodworms and not water changing as much. I have no plants in the tank, so nitrates started getting pretty high, is my best guess. And unfortunately, I lost them all. I had two that were alive the night that I went in to check, and I was going in for their nightly feeding after a football game, and yeah, I saw one not moving at all, and one of my big female, out completely visible in a corner. Normally she hides quite a lot unless food is in the tank. So needless to say, I panicked. I had two alive, a young male and my big adult female, and neither of them made it through the night. Then the next day I woke up, they were in a separate tank that was clean. They were in with the Leopoldi angels, which is very similar water conditions as far as pH and TDS and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't make it. So yeah, that hurt something fierce. It still does hurt. I've had a lot of people ask, like, when are you going to do zebras again? And some people who just didn't see that video and want to know how my zebras are doing. The tough thing is that with zebra plecos, especially captive bred, which is the only way to get them now because they're export banned, the rates of male to female are incredibly hard. Oh, Megan, you're an absolute sweetheart, and you totally don't need to do that. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. So, what I've seen in person and heard from several friends is that the zebras that are bred in the captivity, I can English, I promise. You get 95% of them turn out to be male. So to make sure you get a female, you almost need 20 fish. And I don't know if you guys have paid attention to like what an inch-long baby zebra pleco costs you these days, but it's between 135 and 150 bucks a piece. And then you've got to wait 3 years for them to get to adult maturity and hope that in there you've got a female. Because you've probably got a whole ton of males. And you got to hope and just do this for 3 years, maybe 3.5, that you get one female. That's a big investment. 20 fish at 150 a piece is $3,000. Like, no offense, but I ain't rolling that well. If I was rolling that well, I'd have some real crazy tanks downstairs. But that's why the zebras you don't see anymore, unfortunately. And eventually, yes, I do want to try and do zebras again. I'm actually hoping that Master Breeder Dean gets lucky. We've seen a couple of them cave up together, but no fry and no eggs. So we're kind of there. They're kind of figuring it out. If his zebras spawn, there's a good chance that I will pick some up from him. Okay, so now that we're 6 minutes in or so, I would assume we've got enough people here. I want to do a big announcement, and then we'll start doing questions. So I do. I'll answer this real fast, just because it's concerning this. Marsh Aquatics. I do have some of Dean's L333333333333s, as I like to call them. I have a pair of them, and they're very pretty fish, but they're not. It's actually not the white and black pattern that I like. It is the way that the stripes are horizontal and not the vertical ones. So as weird as it sounds, it's actually the pattern on the zebras that I love, and not necessarily the coloration. The coloration's super cool, don't get me wrong. White and black is hard to get in fresh water. It's very pretty. But it's the pattern, those very straight lines, not scribbly, not anything like that, that I really love. If I'm going to try a different pleco, which I have a line on them. I just need to set some other things up. It's probably going to be the L397s. So those are the ones with like the big, strong orange and black bars. Master Breeder Dean has Corey's right now, some examples like that. I think Bob Steenfont has one, stuff like that. But that would be the next pleco I'd probably try as a designer pleco before being willing to commit to the resurrection of the heartbreak that is my zebras. So anyway, we'll get to the announcement. AGA, as I've told, I've said to you guys, is sold out. One person that'll be at AGA just for fun and kind of helping as a staff member is this really awesome person. I have a poster that will explain this. That guy. Which, by the way, if you've never seen this poster, this is one of Gary's. It's all Gary's photography of all the fish. Well, not all of them, but most of the fish that he and Johannes Graf discovered when they did their various trips over the last decade. Basically, they've got 14 different species that are discovered by them. So Gary's going to be there, and Gary's agreed to do some stuff with me. Also, I'm probably picking up some fish, and that's probably going to sting the wallet a little bit. But, yeah, unfortunately, there's, some weird with the poster. I'll kind of hold it up. If I hold it straight, you'll see this. You get this, gnarly glare from my monitor, which is why it's held at a weird angle and looks all strange and funky. But mostly, Gary's going to be there. I'm going to do some stuff with Gary. It'll be short content. I'm not going to do anything really long just because I want him to be able to have fun. I don't want to take up too much of his time. Marsh Aquatics, you're funny. It's not too bad. Gary kind of gave me a preview of what fish he's bringing up because he and I have a rapport. And I talk to him via email once every 3 months or so. I just kind of say hi. And I forgot to silence my cell phone because I'm a terrible person. I'm so bad at this, man. Most of the time, my cell phone is almost always silenced, except when I drive, so that I can hear certain alerts and know whether or not I need to pull over and check. And sometimes when I'm really ahead of myself, I need to do this, I'll forget to re-silence it when I get home. Okay, so um, look forward to that. I mean, granted, this is a month out for AGA, and then depending on how much of time Gary's gonna let me have, will depend on whether it's one or two videos and kind of how much editing I have to do. But it's coming. That's coming. So I will hang out with like the Indiana Jones of rainbows himself, my personal like fish hero, and that'll be fun. So now we've got all that out of the way. Let me try to dive into chat, and so whenever I'm looking over here, it's just because I'm watching chat. We'll answer some questions. Or just some general comments. Yes, Sultan Plecos, Jeff Chambers are really sweet. They're just not my jam. There's some other people that really love a Sultan Pleco. I like the gray coloration, but there's something about really straight bars on Plecos that I really enjoy, which is why I like the 397s and the Zebras, whether they're vertical or horizontal. Those are just, I don't know why it's so appealing to me, but it is. But I also like the blue Phantom Pleco, but that's because I love blue, as should be obvious by the fact that I wear blue all the time. Oh, let's see here. What else we got? How much of a loan am I taking out to buy rainbows from Gary? It's not that, like, I'm not spending a like ridiculous amount of money, but the stuff I am getting is fairly new to the hobby, and I'll wait until I get an opportunity to sit down with Gary and show you photos that he's taken of some of these fish. He sent me some previews, and I did this. So I didn't even ask how much, even though he had prices in his emails for the couple of things that he knew he was bringing. I just went, yeah, I want these. Just whatever I owe you. Just I'll find the way to sell a ridiculous amount of plants or something in that period of time and make it happen. Must have rainbow from Gary if money and stock was not an issue. So here's the problem when you ask a rainbow person to like pick their favorite rainbow is 90% of the time they go all of them. All of them. Realistically though, if I was picking a single rainbow, my thing would be wanting large numbers. So like most of the time we'll get between 3 and 6 fish if they're juveniles, or we'll get like between 25 and 40 eggs. Things like that. If I could get just even juveniles, but like to the numbers that I have my Blaheri, where there's like 50-ish of them, it would probably be the Uter Bosmani, just because there's that super dark, basically red in the back of the tail when they're adults on the males, and then like almost black in the front half of the body. They're so dark compared to the normal Bosmani. And Bosmani are the rainbow that made me want and need to have rainbows. So it's kind of, the crazier the Bozeman I get, the happier I get, if that sounds like reasonable to you guys. Lumpy Dog wants furcadas by the hundreds, which I can totally respect. Furcadas are super cool. I actually think that I like furcadas more than luminatus, and I know that luminatus are super popular. But if you really do like the pseudomugils, which are technically not a rainbow, but we just lump them in anyway, look at Cyanodorsalis. And a couple questions I'll answer in a second. And let me explain why Cyanodorsalis are so cool, but why they're not common. Why they're not common is they're a brackish water fish that needs almost saltwater levels of salinity. This is why I don't keep them. But when you keep them, they're like, it's not very big. They're like topping out at like this length, but the very top of the body is this like neon blue stripe, and you can't miss it. It is super bright, kind of like a cardinal tetra or a neon tetra. It's that kind of blue. And then in the tail, there, in some of the pectoral fins, there's little hints of yellow, and then the rest of the body is just kind of silver. So when they're flicking around, you see these little bits of yellow with this giant, like, completely unmissable blue stripe. They're so cool. They're super easy to breed. Gary breeds them by the hundreds. And the problem is, because they're brackish, a lot of people don't find them very interesting because not a lot of people don't want to keep brackish tanks. But he's had them in basically saltwater levels of salinity. So if you could get a batch at that super brackish, almost salt level, raise fry in that, and then transition them to salt and have those swimming around in like saltwater tanks, that'd be really bad for someone like me who's been doing everything he can not to buy a salt tank because I love soft coral and I know how easy it is to kill and how expensive it gets. It's a bad habit. Okay, so we had a couple of extra rainbow questions in here. I want to get to them all. Uh-oh. Somebody who's calling me Bendy, which means they know of a super secret Discord that I go to. The fish tuber I've most recently subscribed to. I'd probably actually have to look, because I think what I'd rather say is the fish tuber who I think does not get enough love, who does quite a lot of work, and that guy's actually streaming at the same time that I am, which is the Fish Tank Barn, Mike Howe. But most recent, I'd have to like literally check my YouTube. So one sec, I'll find out. I want to know. Let me see here. I know, this is so exciting. So also a question that was in there was, do rainbows hybridize? And I want to answer this while I'm looking this up like a complete schlub. Yes, rainbows hybridize. They will hybridize technically in the wild. And this has happened in the case of where the Running River rainbow used to be. So someone introduced a domesticated rainbow into the wild location where the Running River rainbow used to be. And because domesticated rainbows learn to basically breed with any rainbow, that took the same behavior in with the colony of Running Rivers and started hybridizing with them and nearly made them extinct. Real bad, real bad. Typically in the wild, we don't find the same species together. So you might have one river system that has 6 or 7 different, but there's different locations that tend to be barriered off, where it's like you have a Melanitania here and a Chalatharina over here and stuff like that. And those don't typically hybridize in the wild because their populations are so big, they're not hanging out together. And they're in different locations despite being in the same river system. So you could have the Running River has like 2 different species of, I think it's one Splendida, one Inornata, and then the actual Running River rainbow along its water system. But they're all blocked off from each other from like small waterfalls or sorts of stuff like this, where they stay away from each other. A great example would be like the upper Tor River rainbow that Lucas Bretz has. If you go further in the Tor River, there are other rainbow species, but they're separated by kind of some naturally occurring physical barriers so that they don't hybridize. So there's that question. Oh, you know what? I'm realizing now, like, I don't subscribe to a lot of channels very regularly. The most recent one I subscribe to is a pair of guys in China who are trying to do an aquascaping channel, but they only have like 2 videos out, and they actually commented on one of my recent videos. Super nice guys, and they actually have really good videos. I've watched the 2 they have so far. They're really nicely done. They're way better than mine as far as quality is concerned. But I want to get you guys the actual channel name because I think they're cool. And I think you guys should check them out. When can I learn all this? So I have a really strange brain, which is to say, I'm not photographic memory, but I'm really close. So when I care about things, this is where it's weird. When I care about things, I absorb the like most seemingly useless information known to man. So things like all this complication stuff about rainbows is in my brain because I love them and it's part of my hobby. For your average aquarist, they might be like, yeah, but that's one species of fish. What about tetras and danios and angels and this? I'm like, yep, they like water? I mean, I know more than that, but like the things that I'm really passionate about, I dive really deep into, and my brain is really good at absorbing a lot of information, just usually not the stuff that would say like, give me a pay raise at work or something, right? Like, work, that's boring stuff. We won't remember that. Fish, we'll remember all that stuff. So that channel is called Scape Sessions, by the way. Really cool, very young channel. There's, like I said, I think 2 total videos for these guys. Really nice quality. Actually, I think there's some good lessons to learn. I can't scape, so I love watching scaping channels like Yuri, George Farmer, Green Aqua, especially just because the production value for Green Aqua is so good. I love watching them and sitting there going like, I don't know how they can do that. Felipe Oliveira is like one of the other guys. Like, he's just so good at scaping and making it seem like he's barely doing anything hard. He's just like quick and fast at it. It boggles my mind. And yeah, Alyssa, I am very much limited by my space. So part of one of the things that when I was talking to Gary, I think it was Sunday Sunday, we were going back and forth in an email chain. He was like giving me this giant list of like stuff he had available, which mostly was eggs and stuff that he knew he could spawn and get a decent amount for, and then a small list of juvenile fish. And he's bringing a bunch to AGA. So if you're at AGA, you've got a chance to buy Gary Lang fish, which you should do. I highly recommend it. And I basically had to tell him, like, I have tank space, but I need to be a good boy because I promised I would breed certain fish. And if I take all that tank space away that I've just made for breeding, and I'm moving some fish out of the fry system so that I have more space, then I won't have room to breed those fish, and it'll be another like year. And I can't do that. I got to get stuff done. Like, I've got to breed Bob's Bozemanii. My goal is to make somewhere between 300 and 500 Bozemanii, and then I'll move and start breeding probably Aleni Wapogas, and then hopefully, I can move on to those wild-caught Rubro striata. I just want to let them have a little more time to grow out, get a little bigger, make absolutely sure their color pattern is correct, because there is a very small chance that they're a very similar looking from the same rough capture locations fish. That's I think it's an Inornata. I'd have to go back and check my talk back and forth, but the goal is I kind of have like a checklist of fish I want to do. I definitely want to breed. The other thing I need to breed is my Wanamensis, because there's just not enough of them, and I have probably the best line in the United States, which that comes from a guy named Mark Nicholson. He also has a severely underpaid attention YouTube channel, but he does just raw video, no voiceovers, nothing like that. But if you're a big rainbow nerd, Mark is one of the best in the United States, and he does a lot of pseudomagills. So if you like pseudomagills and you want to see spawning behavior, coloration, fry, all that kind of stuff, he's a really good channel to check out just for some base footage, because he keeps a lot of them, and he's one of the best breeders probably in the country as far as some of the rare, hard to get stuff and having the best possible bloodlines you can get. Just plain and simple. I mean, like, if I buy my fish from them, they're probably really good at what they do, because I'm a stickler for being as good as I can be. So often, like, I want to start with the best quality I can get without going like too insane. Like, I'm not importing stuff from Europe, which you could do for certain bloodlines, would be the best way to get them, but that's where we start. And yeah, I mean, they have that Aeromaster, you bring this up, they have 7 subs. It's a totally small channel, but they're brand new. I mean, you can tell their videos haven't been around that long. So I think over time they will get some attention just because they make some really nice content. And also they're in China. So there's And I think they might be slightly outside of China, like Hong Kong, Taiwan, something like that. But there's a very different thing where, like, YouTube just doesn't exist in actual mainland China. They have completely different things because of Chinese censorship and things like that. But that's politics. Let's not get into that. Let's talk fish. Let's see. I want to check for some other questions. Like, feel free to fire questions at me. I will do my best to answer as many as I can. Don, you're most welcome for any advice on planting your tank. One of my favorite things is plants in tanks. It just happens to be that rainbow fish love planted tanks, so these two things marry together really well for me. So that's kind of what I do. Yes, so rainbows are an egg scatterer, so they fertilize outside the body. You can actually watch the way, and I need to get new footage that's a little better of rainbows doing the shimmy, but basically they'll sit side by side like this, and they'll rub their back sections like this, and you'll see the eggs fire out from the back. And you can't ever really see the males milt, but I mean, if you had absolutely crystal clear water and are like low iron glass or acrylic, you might be able to see it, but like standard glass, there's enough of a tint that you're never going to see those. But you could, in theory, get it to where you could see it in the water column. It's so basically clear you kind of can't tell. And then you can pay attention to the eggs if you prevent them from eating them. That is, because rainbows will just spin right around and eat them. They don't care. It's a tasty treat. They're not the smartest fish in the world. But yeah, so Aeromast is a friend of mine on the East Coast, for reference, who has lots of huge tanks, and I'm super jealous of them. But he at one point was trying to put rainbows in with, I can't remember, it was some larger predatory fish, or it was like Arapaima, if I remember right. And I was like, yeah, that's not, they're going to eat them eventually, I think. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a good idea. But how many rainbows am I going to send you for 1,000 gallons? Do you know how many rainbows you can put in 1,000 gallons of water if you're doing like 50% weekly water changes? That assumes that you want to change 500 gallons of water a week. But man, yeah, you could put 400 in a 1,000 gallon tank if you really wanted to. It'd be really dense, but you could do it. You just have to have like one really crazy sump working that thing, which I know your tank, you do. So, let's see. Yeah, so Tom, when they're sitting there and they're like cheek to cheek in the face, and the back sides are wiggling. So like if you were like this, you'd see this going on. That's spawning behavior. They're about to make some babies, or at least try to. Sometimes you'll have like another rogue male like zip in and break them apart, and just stop the whole shebang. And I've always found it super funny watching rainbows do that, where like that one rainbow is really just trying to sweep in and fertilize some eggs like on the sneak, but just breaks it up before the female ever lets her eggs loose, and then she'll run off for a while. It's super funny to watch. Like I've sat before watching one of my community tanks where I don't fish eggs out of it because it's a community. I'm watching my Bozeman eye male and my Bozeman eye female sitting there trying to spawn, and my Goiter River like zip in and break them up. Or one of my Australians zip in and break it up. It is super funny to watch, and I remember like at one point while I was unemployed, I sat and watched my rainbows do this for like 45 minutes straight. And it was so silly. They're such strange fish because they have like no parental instinct. They're super pretty, but they're not the smartest fish in the world. They just understand that like human will give food, so follow the human whenever the human's in the room, which makes you think they're smart. But in actuality, they'll sit there and spar with each other, and the two males will sit and spin circles, and they won't have any presence of mind as to what their surroundings are. They'll ram into driftwood, rock. They'll beat up scales. They'll bonk themselves on the nose. They're kind of dumb, but man, are they pretty. Blake's Aquatics, you're welcome. From Australia, sweet. See, so one thing that's really cool about Australia is that they have been basically the pioneers of rainbows for so long, because there's this really big thing in Australia about going out and collecting native fish and keeping them in an aquarium. And they have rainbow fish, so why wouldn't you go collect native fish? Because they're beautiful. And it's part of like the big forefathers of rainbows now. So like Jerry Allen would be the best example of getting these fish more popular, to where the United States and Europe went, those things are really cool, I want some of those fish, as opposed to just really the Australians keeping them. So big props to the Aussies, because without you, we wouldn't have the love for rainbows that we do now. Let's see. So we'll take a moment. I don't see any crazy questions, but fire them at me, guys. I'll take all questions. One thing I'll say is, for those of you going to AGA, even if you're not, so like if you're close enough to drive, Friday and Saturday the vendor room is open, and you don't have to have a ticket to go into the vendor room. And Sunday the auction is open to everyone, but the vendor room will close when the auction begins. So basically the vendor room is not open at all Sunday. It's mostly going to be the vendors tearing down their stuff and going, and the auction will run instead. That's the stuff that's open to everybody. It's mostly the workshops and the speakers. And there's a dinner, I think, Saturday night that requires a ticket. So if you're close enough, and for some people, close enough is 10 hours away. I've seen some crazy people that will make really long drives for conventions and all sorts of different hobbies. That's where, I would say, even if you don't have a ticket, come out and have some fun. Now, if you're flying across country, you probably want a ticket because you want to be there multiple days. But if you just want to hang out with YouTubers and check out the vendors, I'll be there. I'll be hanging out. Okay. So we got two questions. We'll start with Mr. B's Fishing Things. So, Inside Dirt, what fish is Gary excited about? He actually threatened to swap me with a rolled up newspaper based on an idea I had for a video to shoot with him that would require him to pick a couple of rainbows. So it's he refers to it as Sophie's Choice for those of you who are big Meryl Streep fans. Basically, that he doesn't want to have to choose. He loves them all very equally. But I think one of the fish that I've heard him be the most excited about is one of the latest Bozemanai, which is the Kromsa location. So Kromsa is I think it's either a river or it's a very large stream. It's not one of the lakes, but you get these adult Bozemanai who stay this big. They stay the size of like a Pracox rainbow, but it's a Bozemanai. So you could keep Bozemanai in like a 20 long. Now they're not as dark red as like the Ooters or even the Atinjos. They are a little more yellowy orange, but they stay super small compared to most Bozemanai fish, which is really, really intriguing that the catch location isn't a differentiation in color so much as it is now a differentiation in size. They're significantly smaller fish, which is really neat, really interesting, and it makes you kind of wonder how the tables turn to make them evolve for size as opposed to color differentiation. The problem is there's only like 3 people in the United States who have the Kromsa and are breeding them, and Gary, I think, just got some from one of those 3. So it'll be a while before he's breeding them any number. But eventually they will be out there. There's another one that I'm getting from Gary that is the smallest, like super colorful Melanitania out there that they've found so far. And if you could think of, I'm just going to describe the fish. I'm not going to tell you what it's called because that's for another video. You can think about a Goldii Decai, right? So that kind of pale, shimmery blue body with those orange and yellow fins, but make the male a maximum of 3 inches in size. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's coming my way come AGA. I think I'm getting six fish, 3 pairs, if I remember right. It might be 4 pairs. I'd have to recheck. I think it's 4 pairs actually now. I think it's 4 pairs. They're not cheap, but but they're super worth it because you can keep them in a way smaller tank and breed them in a much smaller tank. Much like the Praycocks, how they're fine in like a 20 long or a 20. They'll probably actually go into the 20 long where the Blaharii are currently at after the Blaharii get moved down to their new home, that big acrylic that I'm working on, which has been delayed, but that's mostly because of the iguana, which we'll talk about that in a sec. I want to answer a couple more questions, and then I'll babble about the iguana for a minute. Because a lot of you actually seem to really care about an iguana, so cool on you. Ron cannot wait to see my fish room. I kind of, after our interview on his channel, I said, like, hey, dude, anytime you want to come down, you're welcome to tour my fish room. I'll just make time for you. So during AGA, he is most likely coming over, and he's actually getting some fish from me, too, which would be real fun. Chubby Guppy, do I have any plans to release more Hawaiian Moscows? Yes, I'm back in kind of a shipping window where weather is good. I can ship again. Oh, man, you went down to one female. I'm super sorry about that. Yeah, oh, but you got fry. That's good. That's good. Ratio off, well, I mean, if the ratio is one male and a lot of females, that's perfectly fine, but you probably have a lot of males in these fry. That being said, yes, I will be doing some. The biggest problem for me is finding time to ship right now. My work schedule has been really crazy. My light ran out of power. I was kind of testing to see how long that little light would last. It's powered by basic USB, so it can't charge while running. But light looks actually surprisingly good right now, so that's fine. I'm trying to get a proper like softbox. I just haven't found what I want because I want an LED. I don't want to ever have to change bulbs. And finding one that fits like the color temperature I want, the color temperature of light, is surprisingly hard. Most of them are in the really warm tones, and I want something a little more daylight spectrum, so like 6500K, as opposed to most of them are like 5500 or 2700 where they're really warm. Just dumb things you probably don't care about, but you know. Christopher, don't worry too much. You can always watch this back. I mean, there's not all of this is like a live stream required, but I'll be on here for at least another 20 minutes. Kind of depends on how many questions you guys have. So yes, smaller rainbows are being found. Blake's, I'll trade you the ability to catch wild rainbows for access to fish clubs and auctions. Entire state, 2.5 hour drive. I'm not gonna lie, if I lived in a pretty remote area and I was as like bat-ass crazy about fish as I am now, I'd make a 2.5 hour drive for a fish club. Especially if it's like once a month. I think I could find a way to justify that. But just not if it was like Seattle style traffic, because it takes me from work to get to my fish club meetings. It takes me an hour and a half, and I'm driving like 20 miles. This is my try not to be crazy angry face, because it should never take me an hour and a half to drive 20 freaking miles, but traffic is so bad in Seattle that, you know, I'm driving during rush hour in order to make my meetings, and they are horrible when it comes to commuting. But meetings are super fun. I wouldn't miss them for basically anything, so that's just life. Want to find, does anyone so here's a reasonable pair of questions. Number one, what are the name of your blue guppies? Those are blue Hawaiian Moscows. So they were originally created by Luke Roebuck, who passed away I think 6 or 7 years ago now. He was an IFGA, so the International Fancy Guppy Association judge, as like super breeder. He had multiple world champion lines under his belt. Guy's just like Guppy King. And also a pretty stellar dude. He has a really great reputation of just being a super nice guy and being very personable and fun to be around. He made this line, and when he passed away, they seemed to just disappear into oblivion. It's been really hard to find them. I got really lucky. And some of the other people, like the Chubby Guppy, who have been looking for them, I mean, he had like lines from 3 different people, and they're all like ever so slightly different. It depends on how well that person kept that line. One is like perfect, very similar to mine as far as quality. Not that I'm bragging. It's more on Leanne, the person who I got mine from, who took extremely good care of them and kept the line very strong and kept the genetics really diversified. So that's kind of the story on those guppies in like the fastest way possible. So they're just a blue Hawaiian Moscow. So they're a combination of a Moscow strain and a set of fish that were bred by Hawaiian breeders to get blues. So they took a blue Moscow and this blue Hawaiian bred fish and combined them to create the blue and touches of like green and purple that you see when they flick and get their iridescence in these particular Moscow fish. Thomas Barron, who is local and actually knows the same Leanne that I just spoke about, was asking, how does someone get into my fish room? So this is oh Lord. I know some people that are showing it with some nicknames that have to do with some of my other hobbies. That's terrible. Anyway, so similar to what Joel has talked about, it for those of you who watch Korososkin's stream, it's one of those things where like the more you do YouTube, the more and more you don't want like a million people knowing where you live. So how does one get into my fish room? I basically have to know you well enough to trust you, unless I'm doing, you know, if we have a group of people coming to AGA and it's like 4 or 5 people really wanted to tour my fish room, I probably would do so. But if it was like 15 people, I don't know. I want to take 15 people to my house. It's just a matter of one. It's 2 fish rooms that are 2 small rooms. You know, there's not a lot of standing room in them. Like 5 or 6 people might be able to fit in there, or shuffle through. But like, you know, 15 certainly can't. And more importantly, I don't know that I want to drive my my roommate and his kid crazy with a bunch of people babbling about fish late at night. But I mean, yeah, the biggest thing is really like, if I know you well enough and you're out here, what I'm actually really looking forward to is Joel's been working on the concept of like a public space, kind of like a maker space. And if that happens, I will like almost certainly be working with him and probably will have a tank or 2 in that space, which will be on public display for people. So you'll be able to walk into during some amount of hours is the goal. I don't know. There's a lot of things he has to work out. This is all on Joel. This is kind of his jam, but there's a few YouTubers who are kind of on the list of like, hey, do you want to take some part in this? If I hash it out correctly. And I'm one of those people who was like, dude, yeah, I'm in. I totally would love to do that kind of stuff. Because the opportunity to meet people, just like when I went to Reefworks, here's a great example. Big D Smoke, who didn't even tell me his YouTube name, he and I talked for like 45 minutes, an hour, about all sorts of stuff, between me making mistakes, plants, rainbow fish, all that kind of stuff. And that's the part I remember the most about Reefworks, is like talking to him, talking to Rogue Aquariums, battling with Corey and Joel and some of the other guys that were there, who are, you know, your YouTube personalities, but more the people that like just watch stuff. An opportunity to meet people in person. I'm an ENTJ personality type. It wasn't you. I thought it was you. Well, my bad. It's one of the other. It's someone else who has like a D in their name. That's bad. That's real bad. Anyway, did not tell me his name, which kills me the most because I want to know. I want to be able to associate that with a face. Like, I'm horrible with actual person names. If your name is John, the likeliness of me remembering your name John is really low. But when I know like Big D Smoke, I won't forget that. As strange as that might sound, like, and I think that's just because I'm a gamer, and we gamers, like, we recognize gamer handles better than actual names. So it's real silly. But like, that opportunity to sit and talk with people and just talk fish with other nerds is the thing that I like the most about going to any given event. And that was the same in gaming. Like, I've gone to a couple very large gaming conventions for some of the games that I really care about. And the opportunity to talk with other nerds who I know, whether they're from across the country and I play with them regularly, or it was just random people that are like, hey, we play the same game on the same server. It's just super fun. Like, that, you have this, without ever knowing someone, you have this shared love of something, and you get this opportunity to just kind of geek out and have fun and make a new friend. And that's something that's really up my alley is, I guess, the way to put it. Like I said, I'm kind of an ENTJ personality. I'm very much an extrovert. I like being out around people, but being a fish keeper, I also love just like sitting in my place of zen and relaxing with my fish when I'm not at work, because my schedule beats the bejesus out of my brain. But when I get those opportunities to go out and meet people, I absolutely love them. It's just kind of one of those crazy things where like I'm both a hermit, but at the same time very extroverted. Where if I don't like go out and meet people or go out and see friends, I will go completely stir crazy. So we've kind of answered this, but there was a question from Ginger about did I hear you correct that like you don't need a ticket for the vendor room and the auction? Very correct. So if you are within a reasonable distance of AGA, which is in technically Renton, Washington, but that's right outside of Seattle. It's like 10 minutes south of Seattle. And it's actually closer to the airport than actual Seattle, which is really nice for those who have to fly in. You're actually going a shorter distance than any of the Seattle convention centers. If you're going to just the vendor room or to the auction, no ticket required, completely free. That's one of the things that they're doing correctly, if I'm going to put this right. Because the AGA tickets are not cheap. That's my biggest qualm about AGA, is that the tickets are really expensive for someone who just wants to go. And I get that like we're flying people in from Germany and all over the place, like outside the country. But at the same time, like $60, whew, that's a rough one. That's a rough one for a fish convention. I feel like you could do, and part of it is because they limited to only 240 tickets. So if it wasn't limited, you could probably have cheaper tickets and just have more people buy tickets. It's that like quantity over, ticket price mentality, where you just sell more cheaper tickets rather than a few really expensive ones. So yeah, it's little stuff like that. And then for those of you who are there, definitely come find me. I may or may not have made an announcement in another video about AGA and about something that you could do at AGA that involves me. Just saying. So I haven't forgot this. I want to get to this question because now that I've bounced off these two questions. Trayson Hemmert, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. How would I get in line to buy your guppies? The easiest answer to that is email me, which is just my name, bentley.pasco@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. I haven't kind of decided. The first time I did them, I kind of did it all outside of anything like Get Gills or any of the stuff like that, because I was trying to make sure that like, just in case it was like this weird paranoia that like one person wouldn't buy every pair that I put up for sale, so that I could spread them out to as many people. But I think the next batch I sell might just go to Get Gills, just to make it simple for people. That way it's kind of a quick and easy. I still haven't decided, because sometimes it's easier to like have the back and forth conversation via email and make sure that people know exactly what they need, and I can answer any questions ahead of time. And there's also this kind of back and forth of arranging shipping to make sure that person's going to be there when the fish show up, so that they have the best chance of success, all that kind of stuff. It was stuff like that. So I'm still debating on what I want to do. The biggest thing is me finding time to ship. There will be a few weeks coming up where I'll have slightly more time on my hands, as opposed to like I need to be at work at 7 a.m., sometimes earlier, which is before the post office ever opens, and then I don't get home until after the post office closes. And taking a break in the middle of the day and having fish like sit in my car that whole time gets a little wonky, just because, glass and reflecting heat inside the car, and the car getting way hotter than it would be in most other moving vehicles. And this is all like the crazy things that roll through my head about like, well, can we ship? We should be able to. The weather's right. It's just a matter of forcing myself to have like a good time window and get all of the fish out in one go. It is kind of what it would be. I'd kind of have to do it again like I did before in a batch, where I'm trying to get like 3 or 4 orders on this Monday or this Tuesday, depending on when that person needs them to kind of arrive. And then the next week, 3 or 4 more orders, and kind of only doing so many so many fish. So I hope that answers that for you, Trayson. Which, by the way, you have a sweet first name. I just want to put that out there. I like people with more unique first names. It's just as someone with a weird first name, it's just something that catches my eye all the time. Candy it knows my other email, my more personal email, and not. I used to use my personal email more on my channel. I switched just because I wanted a dedicated email for fish, so that something didn't get lost kind of in the cogs of how busy my personal email actually gets. Just as a person in the tech industry, I get barraged by recruiters seemingly on the daily, and most of the time they've never read my resume. They have no clue that I don't want to relocate. They're trying to send me to Minnesota or North Dakota or Maine or Ohio. And while I'm sure there are people in those areas who be like, oh, we'd love to have Bentley out here, you guys know how incredibly hard it is to move fish tanks, not to mention 30 of them, which that's how many I'm going to be at in like another week is 30. Especially big fish tanks. Oh my god, I can't imagine trying to move like my 150 gallon or, some of my 140 gallon guppy mansion. Like, I don't know how I would move that right now and keep them safe. Oh boy. Oh boy. That's a headache I don't want to ever have to have. So Chubby Guppy mentioning another Discord. So I'll just give a minor shout out to, there is a Discord channel that I occasionally pay attention to. It's called Fishcord. It is a lot of really young people. Like, I'm kind of the old man on the server, and I'm not, that old, but, it's kind of fun sometimes. There's a lot of people who, talk in several channels like plants or something like that. There's some really super knowledgeable people who are experts in things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to find an expert in, like stingrays. There's a stingray expert that's out there, things like that. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. Oh, so I just saw Dwayne Timberlake's message, and I totally realized I forgot to grab it. Mark's Aquatics, so not Mark Shrimp Tanks, but Mark's Aquatics, who also has been breeding his zebra plecos, which, big congrats to that guy. I won something from his channel, which is kind of crazy. I just kind of meant to leave the comment, not necessarily for the contest, although it was like, hey, if I win something, isn't that neat? Which is a little glass stick-on suction cup planter, which is kind of cool because I have plastic ones, and this is an actual nice glass one instead of my cheap piece of junk plastic ones. And it's actually sitting downstairs by the new tank as I'm trying to figure out where I want to put that thing. So let's see. We've got some couple of good questions, and I want to get through them. Make sure I'm not missing them. Ginger is going to be in Olympia. That's not too far. And Chubby Guppy talking about more of some of the different lines and how the colors shake out. So let's see here. Any advice for L. Meboldi? So that's Lagonendra Meboldi. Immersed, it's doing wonderful. Submerged, still haven't turned it red. So, yeah. So the red version. Really what it comes down to is Lagonendra Meboldi, in order to be very successful, tends to need a pretty high amount of CO2. Like, I have the red version and I have the green version, so I have two different. The green version just doesn't care. It grows like a weed. The red version is still staying kind of small and green because it's not getting enough CO2, because I do low CO2 amounts, but it's growing healthily. The biggest thing I would say is try to plant it nearest to wherever your CO2 comes out, if you have CO2 in your tank. If you don't have CO2 in your tank, you could try some of those. I wouldn't do liquid carbon, but you could try some of those little tablets that you can buy that dissolve and produce CO2. They're basically what's an Alka-Seltzer tablet for the aquarium. You could try some of those. The other thing is Lagonendras have some really interesting nutrient requirements. So you might not have, I'm not sure about your water. If you're like me in Seattle, where we have almost nothing in our water, a lot of plants tend to have calcium deficiencies really commonly if you're not buffering with calcium. So like crushed coral or crushed oyster shells, stuff like that, or just dosing calcium itself into the water column. And then, if I remember right, that particular plant, in order to get its red really well, needs a little bit more boron than most other plants. I think I'm remembering that correctly. It's either boron or it needs boron and magnesium, one of the two. So basically, I would just kind of look at your CO2 and your fertilizer regime, maybe up your fertilizer doses because it's a low demand plant. You could have some faster growing plants that are really sucking the nutrients away and it's not getting quite enough to be very successful when it's submerged. But the big thing is if it succeeds immersed, it's getting all that atmospheric CO2. And then when it gets into the water, it's going from, something like 400 parts per million CO2 to like anywhere between 5 and 35, depending on whether you're injecting CO2 or not. So that's like the long answer of basically just saying like, how's your CO2? Is it near the CO2? Try putting it near the CO2. Hope that helps. Talk about a hard move. 12 people. Yes, you told me it took you 12 people to move your 1,000-gallon, you braggart. Shame on you, Aeromast. How dare you make me so jealous of your giant tanks? You have like 1,000-gallon, a 700-gallon, like a 500-gallon. You're such a bastard. So no CO2 using Excel. Keeping algae at bay, yeah, which it should do that. There's built-in glutaraldehyde inside any of the liquid carbons, which that's going to murder algae like crazy. So one thing that I will say, and then I'm going to go to a couple other questions. There's a great question from Ron which I want to address. Much like light, I think CO2 regulators are ones where you don't necessarily want to cheap out too much. That being said, if it's plant only, there's a pretty basic Milwaukee Instruments one, which I think is only like $50, that Joel uses and has had great success with. Me personally, I like the basic CO2 Art diffuser. It's a little bit more expensive. It's like $100, but it comes built in with a bubble counter and all that stuff, and it's a really nice diffuser, or regulator, not diffuser. So there's kind of that. But realistically, you could probably get away with just, if you're only plants, just the Milwaukee Instruments, because if it off-gasses when it's really low on pressure, who cares? There's no fish to die from it. You should be fine. And then depending on the size of your tank, I would shoot for something like 30 to 35 parts per million CO2. Testing for CO2 can be a pain in the butt. Sometimes it's just a matter of like just playing with the gas until you get where you want to be. 100 for a reg, yeah. So like a good example would probably be there's a specific Milwaukee one. If you'll give me a few minutes, I can look it up for you. I want to answer a couple more questions and then I'll hunt that down. So stay in chat. Okay, so Ron, I'll answer your question. So Friday Fish Facts. What am I looking forward to most at AGA? So here's the thing. I really want to go to all the talks, but at the same time, I think, honestly, the thing I am looking for the most is just kind of the social side of it. Getting to meet folks from across the country, getting to sit and chat with just, people like Gary Lang who are coming out, or Karen Randall's going to be there, Crystal Castleman will be there. These are the big names, but also just like any of the folks who are in kind of the fish fam that I have an opportunity to sit down and chat with. That's what I care more about. Like, I'm taking days off basically to socialize. I mean, I definitely want to go see like all the talks. That's a big thing. Like, I love talks, and sometimes the more scientific and nerdy, the better, just because it's what engages my brain a lot. But the social side is more what makes me go like, I don't care what the convention costs. I'm going to be there. It just happens to be nice that it's in my backyard. It's like 10 minutes from my house. So I don't have to pay for like a flight and a hotel and all those things, which, part of why I would love to do something like Aquatic Experience or Aquashella. But, in my current situation, that's kind of out of my budget. I would rather take that money and use it toward things to improve just like the channel here, whether it's equipment or things like that. Or, just have a rainy day fund in case something crazy happens, like a power outage, which hopefully won't happen ever again. But I've only had one in 5 years. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so next question. So yeah, basically it's kind of a combo. I really want to go to the talks, but realistically the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is just hanging out with people. I get to meet people who I've seen online in person, and that's always a fun experience where for those of us who don't always have our face on camera, putting a face to a name is always super fun, and getting opportunity, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes or whether it's an hour or 2 hours, to just sit and talk with other fish nerds. Super fun. Super fun. Ordered several pair of koi guppies from Tone Guppies in Thailand. Should arrive tomorrow. Dwayne, that sounds super cool. Are they the standard koi or like the tuxedo koi? I'd be curious. Like, there's all sorts of. They're really working on that koi set of guppies quite a lot. The biggest problem that I found when I had koi guppies for a while, I had Corey's old ones, is they're super predatory, like day 1 and 2 on their fry. So, okay, tuxedos. I think those are a little. They're not an albino base, I don't think, so they're not quite as like crazy aggressive. Yeah, albino base guppies are actually more aggressive than non-albino guppies. Cool story, right? Let me find that regulator for you real fast. I mean, it's a pretty easy Amazon pickup, but let's see here. It is just a Milwaukee Instruments. I should probably be looking in the correct window. I have one window open for like my Prime Video because I watch quite a lot of Prime Video when I can. And I was putting it, just trying to look up Milwaukee in video and not items. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for right here. Let me get you a not like 8 million mile long URL for this thing. So this is the Milwaukee Instruments regulator that I'm thinking about, and I think Joel uses this as well. The only thing that I would look at, I'm pretty sure this has a solenoid built into it. The biggest thing is make sure you have a solenoid so that it doesn't just like gas the entire time. There's a lot of places that make them. Yeah, okay, has a solenoid. Perfectly fine. Joel uses this. I'm pretty sure this is the exact same one that he uses. It's pretty good. I would say for a like sub $100 regulator, it's probably one of the better ones out there. Like I said, I generally like the CO2 Art one that Corium Co-op carries. I'm actually just picked up the nicer version of the CO2 Art because I want to do some serious testing on it, and I'm going to put that with my new acrylic tank. So we'll get some long-term testing on that and kind of let you guys know how good it is. That's the one that you can add extra manifolds to it to feed multiple tanks and all that kind of nonsense. So we'll see how that works out. I'm hoping. I mean, the normal, like the less nice one. They're both nice, but one's like not as customizable. The basic CO2 Art one is a very nice regulator. I've really liked it. That's the one that's on the 40 long that has the rubro striata in it, and it's been doing a great job. It's a great little regulator, and I can't really say anything bad about it. The only thing I would maybe say is that some of them have a tendency to not like just sit perfectly flat. They'll kind of teeter like this when they're sitting on the bolts, but who cares? It's still putting gas in the water. That's all that matters. Let's see. There's. I want to get this question here. Okay, so coil of purple size, same aggressiveness. Huh, across different strains. That'll be neat. Valley fish, those sound super cool. Do you have a video of those valley fish? Because if so, I totally want to look at them. Or do you have like a picture? Is it on what do you mean a troll? Who's trolling? I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, or do you have an Instagram for those? Because I would totally love to see like a koi guppy that has purple coloration. Even if it's just like the iridescence, that sounds super, super cool. Purple's so hard to find in freshwater, and when you can find it, it's just crazy. Oh. What did I miss? Sorry, man. I can only keep up with chat so fast. I don't want to make so here's the thing. I don't want to make Candy a mod because she's a mod in every other channel, and I feel like she never gets a break. So I'm trying not to like make her basically feel like she has to work in every channel known to man. Because she's like, I swear, if there's a fish channel that live streams, Candy is a mod in it, and I almost feel bad because I know that cannot like. There's almost this feeling of like I always have to work. Where was it? How far up is it? Robots don't take breaks. Candy's not a robot. All right. Well, I'll submit to the greater overlords. I tried to give you a break, Candy. I tried. So yeah, do I intend to sell rainbows in the future? Yeah. I've sold them in the past. I'll be selling them soon. Actually, I have certain rainbows that are getting sold come AGA. So, but that's to one specific person. That's to Friday Fish Facts. He actually specifically put in a request asking if I had certain rainbows available, like what I had available. I get twitchy when I can't remove those. All right, so Candy just has to be a moderator or she loses her mind. That's good to know. So yeah, some of my rainbows, the big thing is when I breed all the Bosemani, for example, or the Eleni Wapogas, that's when I'll more actively sell rainbows. As far as shipping is concerned, I probably would only ship eggs just because it's way safer to ship a set of eggs. But as far as like local selling, basically I'll be taking them up to Aquarium Co-op because I've just got a good relationship with them. They're pretty good. And yeah, Valley Fish, I'll check as soon as the stream is over. Thank you for letting me know. I will hunt you down. I just don't want to like sit here on my phone and, not interact. Let's see here. Should I buy killifish eggs from eBay? So here's the thing about eBay. I've had horrible fish experiences with eBay. But that's live fish. Killifish eggs can basically sit in almost effectively what is considered dry peat for an eternity. So I think buying killifish eggs is pretty safe off of eBay as long as, the species is right. If it's the species you want, you wouldn't want to like buy killifish eggs, get them all hatched, then find out like, oh, I ordered blue gularis and I got golden wonder. That's a commoner killie. I could have got that at the fish store. I want blue gularis, something like that, right? You don't want to get the thing you don't want. Rogue Aquariums, what's up? Pretty soon, I'm going to be going to Darren's place. That's Rogue Aquariums. He's setting up a 600-gallon saltwater system. 600 gallons. I'm like crazy jealous of this thing. And if you haven't like seen, he's got a pretty cool Instagram where it's like he's showing all the plumbing getting done and like the insane standards for this thing. Really, really cool. He's one of the people who's like trying constantly to get me to do salt. But should I ever decide to do salt, which if I do, it'll probably be years from now, to be honest. That's probably the first guy I'm going to. Okay, so we had a couple requests. So one, yeah, definitely as you get closer to AGA, Ron, just reach out to me, buddy. There was a request from Priscilla. We'll see about that in a second. We're kind of getting toward where I think end of stream should happen. But I mean, if you guys keep me too busy, I'll just stay here, right? 600 gallon, yeah, you could probably do at least 100 Bosemani. Depends on the size of the Bosemani. Like Iomarus, which are the biggest Bosemani, probably 100 is safe. If you're doing Chromsas, like 600. Yeah, go real crazy. My goal, actually, if you want to hear something interesting, my goal, kind of my dream tank, if you will, is either a 480 or a 600. The difference is, so 8 foot by 4 foot, and then it's either 2 foot tall or 30 inches tall is the difference between those two tanks. And I want to put 2 schools of fish. Just 2. I want Chilatherina blaheri and Bosemani. And I want at least 70 of each in full adult size, because what I want to do is I want to see if they'll school independently in a water system that big. Because in most like small tanks, right, we'll have 6 of maybe a fish and 6 of a different fish. They'll all school together because the water system is small enough that they'll just stay together as rainbows. But I'm wondering if I get them in big enough numbers in a big enough tank, if they will independently group instead of being one giant mixed group the entire time. It's kind of like a crazy mix of a dream tank and an experiment all at the same time, because I'm a weirdo. Want to try buying and hatching killifish eggs. Honestly, like, I think the best part about killifish is that the eggs are so durable. Mr. B, you're great. um, the eggs are so durable that it's really easy to get them from whether it's a killifish breeder or online. Like I would actually look at I can't remember the exact name of the Killifish Association, but they do lots of stuff where like when you join, they just one member will just at random send you some killifish eggs, and you get to that's how you start in the Killifish Association. So you might actually look into the Killifish Association, because you could just get like some random free killifish basically for paying your membership fee and get an opportunity to experiment from there. Plus, you'll be with the best experts out there. It'll be all the crazy killifish people, which deep down, I love the crazy killifish people because they do some of like the most insane things when it comes to fish. Like you would think they're basically keeping their fish in a shoebox in a dark closet somewhere. Like it's such a mad science kind of thing with some of the like the really hardcore killifish guys. And it's just something that is so foreign to like a rainbow fish person where you're like, oh, you want good light, lots of plants, this big tank. You're like, oh yeah, I got a shoebox in the corner over there. It's got this species, and then there's 40 other shoeboxes. Like, you can keep a fish in a tank that small? It's a killifish. They don't go anywhere. definitely could not do that with rainbows. Oh my god, you guys are all like just spamming. Okay, I get it. Yeah, I'll stay for a while. Jeez. Would I ship eggs to Liverpool, UK? So here's the problem. When you get into international shipping, holy lord. Okay, I have to address a few of these in a second. Let me answer this question. Shipping outside of the country usually requires an import license, and then requires, for me, can require an export license. However, I think that gets different when you're doing eggs. What I would actually do is I would say there's really, really, really good rainbow fish breeders in like Germany, especially Germany and parts of the UK. I would almost say go there because they have some of the best lines of certain fish in the world. And those are ones that like Gary has had to go to the guys in Europe to get, for an example, the Centenniensis rainbow. The best line comes from Europe, and that's how we in the United States got them. I think it's one of those things where it's all about what you're looking for. There are some very specific fish that honestly, Europe just has the better lines anyway, so get them in Europe. So it kind of depends on what you want. You can shoot me an email. Like I said, bentley.pasco@gmail.com, and I can try and steer you in the right direction. Honestly, like one of the easiest places is probably the Rainbow Fish Live Facebook group. That's where all of, like the super rainbow nerds are. Even people like Gary Lang occasionally will post in there or answer questions in there. But there's several of, I mean, even Peter Unmack, who's like the man when it comes to rainbows, as far as the science side is concerned. So there's that. I want to zip through these super chats real fast just as a thanks because this is foreign to me. I normally do edited content. And then there's a question about worms I definitely want to answer. Chat's really covered it, but I just want to reaffirm this. So Daryl Deemer, I hope I got that right. Gillionaire RC. Gillionaire. You're a Final Fantasy person. Rogue Aquariums, Tampa Tom, Joel from New Zealand. He's like, 1/5 of the population. And then Mr. B. Thank you guys for all like trying to force me to stay on as long as possible. So yeah, let's talk about some of these. So when you have like little red worms, if they're coming specifically out of the anus of the fish, like so if the fish sits still and you see all these little red worms start dangling out, that is basically guaranteed to be calamanus worms. So they'll look a lot like a bloodworm, but it is a calamanus worm. That's where you're going to want to get levamisol, and the best place to get levamisol is selectaquatics.com. That's Greg Sage's company. He sells levamisol, but if you happen to be near a like feed and livestock store, so if you live in a more rural area or you have a big like I'm trying to remember, in the Midwest there's a specific like kind of like Home Depot but the farmer version. I can't remember the name of the chain, but they tend to carry levamisole regularly. The difference is some of them are not aquarium safe. So this is where getting it from Greg is probably super, super safe. But there are lots of feed stores that carry levamisole naturally because it's used as a dewormer for things like goats and sheep and stuff like that. So levamisole, yeah, Tractor Supply. There, thank you, Tractor Supply. You guys are the best. Um, I'm a city boy, can't you tell? I wouldn't know what to do on a farm to save my soul. But yeah, levamisole is your easy fix. And some places you can actually, yeah, I think you can find it on Amazon occasionally. The difference is make sure you have the right brand that's aquarium safe. So yeah, look for that. Greg Sage has it. It's one of the easiest ones. He's an absolute treat to work with. He's really good about communicating via email to give you answer all your questions, give you the exact instructions you need to treat your tank correctly. It's not that hard. It's something like a quarter teaspoon per 100 gallons you're treating. The way that I did it when I've had to treat it in the past is I will mix that amount into 100 milliliters of water, and then each milliliter of water treats 1 gallon of aquarium. So that allows just a really easy thing where I can use like a 5 millimeter pipette. I can pull the exact amount of water out, and I can perfectly dose my tank without worrying about having messed my measurement up or the medicine not properly dissolving, all these kind of things. Yeah, I mean, here you go. There's 500 micrograms or milligrams per 10 gallons, blah, blah, blah. Greg has really great dosing instructions on his website. He sends them with each package in printed form as well. And he's also really good about answering emails to help people. He helped me in the past. I actually lost a good number of rainbows out of my community tank at one point, way back because I got some from somebody who had the worms and brought them to my tank because I didn't see them when I put them through quarantine because they didn't look like they had any problems, which really sucked. So a little painful, but we learn these lessons for a reason, right? So there's another question. I have to go up, and I promise Priscilla, I'm not forgetting. I'm just a horrible man who's bad at his radio voice. I remember the question now. There was a question was, what is my favorite live food? I would say that like the easy answer is baby brine shrimp because I'm constantly feeding so many baby rainbows that like it's easy, it's simple to hatch, it requires very little work. My favorite live food that I would like to have running constantly, which I'm working on right now, is Daphnia. And that's just because it's a microcrustacean, so there's some very small amounts of calcium that are naturally in there. They're pretty easy once you get the colony set right to keep healthy and going. The biggest thing is whether you keep them outdoors, which is what I'm trying, is an outdoor pond, so that during the spring and the summer and the fall, I have a constant live food source once it gets to the kind of the critical mass. But in the winter, that's going to die back a bit and I'll have less. And just that's when I will probably not feed live food as often as I want to. If I were to pick, like, let's say if we went through the stages of a rainbow's life and pick my favorite live food throughout that, let's have some fun. Let's extrapolate on this question a lot. So when rainbows are freshly hatched at probably a week old, vinegar eels. They're not, I wouldn't solely do a diet of vinegar eels because you need a little extra nutrients. So I would use something like Ceramicron is really good because it's a spirulina based, as far as its primary protein, has a little more extra nutrients. So it'd be like one of those things where I'd feed vinegar eels once a day, and then I'd feed the micron like twice a day in really small amounts for the first, say, 3 weeks or so until the rainbows get big enough to eat baby brine shrimp. Then baby brine shrimp, where I do a good feeding of baby brine shrimp once, and then a feeding of the Ceramicron for probably another month. And then I really want to get them almost strictly on baby brine shrimp for probably until the 3-month range. And then I want to get them back used to like crushed up standard flake, or, you could do things like the Sarah Onip tabs. Tropical has their tab A, which is really good as far as your kind of like your staple foods if you don't want to constantly do live. And then once they start getting to that like young adult, I'm sorry, I'm watching through the stream, watching Tails chase my SAE around because he's feeling finicky, and it's It's making me laugh because he's such a lazy fish normally, and right now he's like, I've got 30 seconds of energy. I'm gonna chase this jerk around. Anyway, once you get to like the 2-inch size, then Daphnia probably from there on out. I actually really like mixing food, like frozen foods. I love having both Cyclops and Daphnia in. Bloodworms are fine as kind of a treat every once in a while, but I would prefer something that has a slightly better nutrient content for things that aren't strictly carnivore. Now, if we're talking like zebra plecos, where they're pretty strict carnivore, yeah, bloodworms are perfectly fine. You can feed that almost as your staple and occasionally mix in something else just to give them something other than bloodworms, but they're pretty healthy on a almost purely bloodworm diet. So there's like 3 answers to that question of what my favorite live food is. I think that should suffice. I hope. I really hope. But basically, yeah. I mean, baby brine shrimp is kind of the king just because it's super easy, it's super efficient, it's really nutrient dense for what it is. And then after that, probably Daphnia, just because it's a really good food source and it's pretty easy to cultivate. Once you have to get it, like once you get it right, it's super easy. But you can, in the early stages, it's kind of sort of easy to screw up. As weird as that sounds, that's a really weird way to say that, but it is. I need a moment. Some water. Okay, Priscilla. So, as I've said before, like my radio voice is semi-broken in that it's actually really hard for me to actively do it as much as I do. But. So I used to work for a jazz station, which kind of requires you to go a little bit lower in the voice, go a little bit deeper, down here, right toward the diaphragm. That's close. It's not perfect. The problem is, like, my radio voice is almost now entirely hinged on a saying that was, like, one of the only things I've ever said on air or in commercials for a while. And I'm so used to talking basically up here, which is my standard voice, which is right kind of in the middle of my throat. There's some weird practices where you learn to control your voice by throwing it kind of around with air inside your system to go more nasal or to go deep down into your chest. I'm just really bad at doing those on the fly nowadays. And about the only time I can do it is when I'm singing very horribly in my car because I'm not a very good singer. But jazz is pretty sweet. I'm going to just comment on Damien's thing. I have some specific jazz I like. I used to work for a smooth jazz station, which listening to smooth jazz on the radio puts me to sleep. But doing smooth jazz live is one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life. No, I am definitely not singing, Joel. No way. No way. That's just absolutely terrible. So do I give my guppies B vitamins for tail health? There's actually a food I've been trying, which is it's just called like premium. It's really weird. It has a kind of bad brand name because it's hard to describe. It's kind of like the tropical food line where like it doesn't sound like it should be the name of a brand, but it is. But they have this specific blue formula that Cascadia Aquatics, woo, there's my bad English right there. Cascadia Aquatics, so my friend Sarah Bills carries and sells. I've been trying that in for a while, and it does have extra B vitamins in its food specifically for tail health, but it's supposed to be designed to bring out better blues in your fish. And so far, it looks like it actually does really good with the blue Moscows. I've seen better, more vibrant blues in my males lately to the naked eye. I've let that tank get kind of overgrown prepping for AGA. So it's harder to capture on camera right now, but I think post AGA I'll be able to like really show it off and kind of talk about the results of that food. It's a little expensive, but it's a like super fine powdery food, which is kind of crazy, but it's really nice. So if you are a complete crazy person, they have a red, a yellow, and a blue formula that are supposed to be big color enhancers using all natural stuff. And it's the only thing I will say is that like the videos that company put out showing how they make their food does not make me want to buy their food. And I don't know that they understand that like showing that process is terrible marketing. But hey, Gillionaire, have a good water change. Water changes are very important. Uh, it's like nasty. Let me talk about that. So there wasn't. I will say I thought at one point about doing a review for the tropical food, and I might do that now just because it's readily available on Amazon. I really like certain foods. So examples, the tropical, it's Vita. Oh, Supervit is what it's called. The Supervit flake, the mini granule, the Tab A, and the Tab B. So I've named 4 foods out of like 6 that I've tried. I like them all. I really like the flake. I think it's actually a really nice flake for how kind of inexpensive it is in the grand scheme of things. It's certainly not to the quality of like the Sarah, what is it, Super Vipan or whatever it is. That's like crazy high quality food. Dean's been using that recently and been raving about it, which means I probably need to try it. But I really like the tropical stuff a lot. I also really like ZooMed's spirulina line. It's like dirt cheap food, and it comes in these massive flakes that you have to break down. But it's actually a really good food, and I haven't had a single one of my fish not eat it. Like even the wild caught rubra striata, they devour that stuff like nobody's business. Both the tropical and the spirulina. Although I swear they like the spirulina more. And it's a cheap food. It's a cheap food. You get a big old tin of it for 13, 14 bucks, something like that. I mean, it's not very expensive at all. The Supervit Tab A is like Sarah Onip tabs, and I use those quite a lot actually for a lot of the young rainbows who are less shy about eating if they don't like absolutely want it top water. A great example would be like the Blaharii rainbows that are in my bedroom over there, basically. They love that stuff. They go hog wild for it. After they figured it out on the first day, their first time ever seeing it, the second like I'm sticking the tab to the glass, they start kind of collecting behind my hand, and as soon as my hand goes away, they're just right at those tabs right away. They love that stuff. The Tab B is it looks kind of like a pill you would take for like a medication. It's a much smaller, kind of slightly rounded pill type shape. That's a sinking tablet. It's not meant to stick on the glass. My Coreys and my Plecos love that stuff. So those are the foods. I think like if I was to pick the 3 as a sweet, it would be the Tab B, the Tab A, and the flake. Just because the flake I can grind to a smaller thing for a small fish, or I can keep it slightly larger for my big fish. It's a little more customizable that way. The granules are nice, but some fish will not pick at them. They sink slightly faster than I think I want them to. That's kind of my only complaint, but otherwise, when the fish get used to it, it's a very good food. So, yeah, I think there's a couple foods I still want to try, and there's like this guppy food that I've been using specifically for the blue guppies, but I really want to try like that Sarah Super Vipan. I'm trying the Sarah. There's like the veg versions of the Onip tabs, so they're a stick-on. They're meant for like mostly vegetarians. I've been using those for as the primary food for the zebra autocinkless that I have, and they've been eating that very well. Which the problem is they're such a shy fish; it's like impossible to film those stupid buggers. So that's why I haven't like included them in videos more recently. And then I'm trying to think. There's one other food. There's a new. It's what used to be. I think they called it Fruity Loops or something like that. There's a new Repashy that's coming out that's basically a more fruit-based Repashy, and that's something I'd kind of like to try for the veg folks. So yeah, and to kind of pile on there to Jeff Chambers' question, comments on Repashy. It's really good food. I just find that I struggle to force the time to prepare it. It's more that like that small amount of time, even though it doesn't take a lot of time to make, I'm probably better off like trimming plants or cleaning a fish tank or editing a YouTube video. And that's I have a couple tins of Repashy that are just sitting, not being used, even though it's extremely good food. And once fish figure out how to eat it, they basically just love it to death. The only problem that you can have with Repashy is don't feed it too often. The reason why is there's basically no fillers in Repashy, so it can lead to constipation in fish. So it's not something, with the exception of say like a pleco that has a very like wood and veg oriented diet. If you're talking your omnivores, don't feed it too often. It doesn't have a lot to push things through fish's system. That's why a lot of the fillers are in there, other than being a binder, is they help act kind of like Metamucil for your fish to keep things going through nice and clean and simple. It's like prune juice for old people. Let's see. Let's bounce into some sweet questions. You guys are keeping me super busy. I gotta call this eventually. I'm just letting you know. Eventually I have to go like get dinner or something, and then I have another video I'm working on that I want to edit. Just try and get you guys as much content as I can. Mr. B, you're most welcome. It's not about being cool, it's just about being helpful. There was something I know I missed, and I want to try and get to it. Okay, here we go. Wait, what? Will what be okay? I have to find your previous one. Oh, yeah, okay. So, to follow up on the levamisol question for you, Christopher, which, if it's supposed to be pronounced slightly different just because of the spelling, I'm sorry. But that's the closest my brain wants to process right now. It's a little sleep deprived. Yeah, levamisol's fine in a planted tank. All the tanks that I've used it in are very heavily planted, and I've seen no problems with the plants. Just keep in mind that you let the levamisol run for, I think it's 2 days. You do the one dose, you let it run for 2 days, and then you want to do at least, I think it's between a 25 and 35% water change, if I remember right. And Greg will tell you these things. He's really good about that before you do the second dose. And keep in mind, when you do the first water change, really gravel vac your tank as much as you can, even if you normally wouldn't, because what levamisol does is it actually paralyzes the calamanus worms, and they'll fall down to the substrate. And then you try to suck them up. Now, 2 doses in a row typically will just straight kill them, but it's this particular dewormer is designed to paralyze them, so they just fall out of the system and they get completely out of the animal, and then you can dispose of them from there. However, in higher doses, when it's usually used against livestock, sorry for my super squeaky chair, by the way, it's just old and angry. When it's used for livestock in higher doses than we can safely do in the aquarium, it will kill them. In the low dose we use in an aquarium, it's a paralytic, and then they just fall out of the fish. And if you gravel vac really nicely, you'll get them out of your tank. And you do a second dose just to make sure. I honestly, I have not super efficiently gravel vac'd after doing 2 doses, and I've had them not come back. So double dose is usually killing them, but just keep that in mind. If you want to be absolutely thorough about it, gravel vac really well. Yeah, and Chubby Guppy is mentioning, like, you want to follow up about 10 days later because it's not going to kill the eggs, should there be eggs. And if you do a larger water change, it shouldn't really matter. I do 50% water changes all the time, and I didn't see an issue. It's just kind of like the minimum water change you want to do is between 25 and 35%. The bigger the water change is probably the better, just because you have more time to kind of gravel vac and pull more stuff out of the system. And also make sure that the medication is out. Don't use like carbon in your filter. If you're going to medicate, the carbon will suck up all the medication and it won't have any effect. Blah, 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 blah. Megan, thank you about the plecos. Yeah, I think any loss of fish really hurts when you're, a crazy person about animals like I am. But yeah, losing a big project that is also similarly a very expensive project certainly hurts in multiple ways. But sometimes even losing a pair of Tetris can hurt if you like them enough or if you've had them long enough. So it's kind of one of those things. Yeah, and I mean they'll become ammonia. There's that stuff too. So I mentioned this a while ago, and then I got into a bunch of questions and some tangents. I want to update you guys on the iguana, which I've posted about a couple times. So we took, who we're calling Fox, by the way, we took her to the vet. And, well, more accurately, my roommate, who's basically kind of claiming responsibility for Fox, is also the one that found her, took her to the vet. We have a reptile specialist vet. And at first, they were worried because she really wasn't eating. And there was also some signs that would lead to a kidney disease that occurs in iguanas that is treatable but kind of expensive to treat. So there's this worry that there was this kidney disease that would be basically outside of the realm of my roommate's ability to afford, and thus we would have to find a more permanent home for Fox, other than us, who was one, very familiar with iguanas, understood how to treat this disease, and was capable of the cost of treating that disease. Good news. So a bunch of blood work was done, came back, no kidney disease. Minor infection, kind of like a bad cold is basically the way to put it. So they gave her an antibiotic. They had to tube feed her to make sure some food got into her system. And then she actually should be home right about now. My roommate took my car to go pick her up from the vet and bring her home. So the good news is she'll be fine. We've been looking. We haven't seen a single post about somebody missing an iguana. So it sounds like Fox is going to be staying with us, and that means that we'll have to get an enclosure built. My buddy Brad, or as we like to call him, B-Rad, who, for those of you who've been around the chats a lot, that's Potato. He builds custom enclosures for reptiles as kind of his side business in his spare time. I talked to him already. He's going to come up here a weekend once we kind of iron some stuff out, and we'll build an enclosure for Fox and put her right in the display room. So there's that kind of big bay window where my arcade games used to be in the display room. And no, my roommate's not bringing me home dinner because he thought I got dinner on my way home, which I didn't. I got home in time to be like, here, take my car. I need to go upstairs and prep. So we'll get her an enclosure built, and of course, like, you know, we'll film that process and show it, because you guys have been like showing a lot of love for the other scaly side of the hobby, which I appreciate. I'm not as big a reptile person as, say, like my cousin Henry, but I do like reptiles. I actually have more of an affinity for snakes than I do lizards, except leopard geckos. I love leopard geckos, but that's because my mom loves leopard geckos, and that's like the only reptile that she really likes. So it's kind of that weird, like, I'm being a mama's boy and I love the thing that my mommy loves. Sean, hello. I'm just going to say that just because you're saying hi and you're on your way to work. I respect the hello right before running out the door. So yeah, there's that set of stuff. Oh, speaking of, my roommate's actually like walking in to harass me with Fox in hand. Do you want to like come on camera for a sec with Fox? You can try to hide your face, but hi, big girl. Hold on. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna do this. Just bring her kind of like right in front. Fox. That camera does not do her justice. Her orange is so pretty. Hi, baby girl. You got a little fuzz on your lip. She's looking at me like, I'm gonna bite you. I'm gonna bite you, fat man. Yeah, so that's Fox the iguana. We're gonna look at building her a really sweet enclosure and giving her something really big to hang out in. But otherwise, she's doing pretty good. She seems more docile. She's like accepting the being held a lot better than last time. Although, granted, we were putting her in a like a big plastic tote to take her to the vet, so I'm sure that was more of a, I don't want to go on that thing. Anyway, there's Fox on stream, and my roommate as well, my roommate Terry. Let me answer. There's a question in chat that's not Fox related. I'm sorry. We're gonna take a time like relaxing off her. Yes, there is a fluval flex behind me. I do have shrimp, but they are not in the fluval flex. And precisely the thing that you're talking about. I have had large Amanos when I first bought my flex. I kept some Amano shrimp in there, and I would find all my Amanos in the back chambers and never have them out front cleaning anything. So I stopped trying to keep shrimp in my fluval flex. I moved them to different tanks, and instead I just run it with, there's a pair of autosynclets in there, and there's a pair of reticulated SAEs that just kind of work on cleaning everything up, and then my one beta. It's a really simple tank. There's almost nothing in it. It's a ton of crypts, and then one melon sword. It's a super simple tank. I really don't this is one of the few tanks I even don't water change it every week. I think I water change it every other week because it doesn't evaporate very much with the lid and everything. And you know, all the fish in there like soft water anyway, and I've got it buffered with crushed coral, so it doesn't have to water change constantly. And there are a lot of fish that like just don't care about waiting 2 weeks for a water change. They're not like rainbows, where rainbows really need weekly water changes. Um, yeah, so it's something like that. So to actually answer your question, there is a solution. It's just not, how do I put this? It's not fun. um, PecTech actually has this really great video for those who've never seen PecTech. If he's a way bigger channel than me, I don't know how you haven't. But that's Sean Peck. He's a really awesome dude. He does lots of cool steampunky things. But he has a thing about fixing, modifying the fluval flex, where basically you take some like filter pad, but a stiffer filter pad. I think I got mine from Swiss Tropicals. It's like the blue 30 PPI pad or whatever, and you cut it to fit that chamber, and you'll have to cut a slit down the center for the little ribs that sit in the middle, and then you just slide that into place, and then you can take some filter floss down the very bottom and a little up higher to really hold that pad in place, and then that creates a block in front of those gates so that they can't move through them. So I did that for a while, and I just found that it reduced the flow so much for what I was keeping at the time, which was a bunch of cardinal tetras in that tank, that I didn't like the combo of reduced flow that I needed to have in order to keep the shrimp in tank, and then having those fish in that tank. So I kind of redid the whole tank. I moved the fish. I redid the whole tank, and then I took the Amano out at the same time and put them in a different tank, and then I just took the mods out, let the flow go back to what it wanted to be, and eventually moved it to a betta tank, and then kind of remodified it so the flow was slightly lower for the betta. But, I don't have things going back and forth in those chambers anymore. They're going up over the, yeah, well, it's kind of hard to stop Amanos from doing that because they're, yeah, and you could use an aqua clear sponge as well, because Amanos are very adventurous buggers, is the best way to put that. Amanos can frustrate me a lot. So you could, I'm trying to remember, they're not, so there is a small gap. It's not super huge, but you could probably do the same thing by just getting some taller sponge pieces and kind of rigging them in there. That being said, like, where there's a will, there's a way, and an Amano is probably going to find a way. I hate to say it. But hey, at least they're keeping the sponge inside your filter chamber pretty clean. So you probably don't have to wring that out quite as often. Silver lining? I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of like my experience has been. Mine didn't crawl over the top, so luckily I could keep them in. But yeah, that's just one of the things. And yeah, you could probably do that with like cherry shrimp because they're smaller, and Neos don't typically climb out of the water. Amanos are just a special kind of creature that doesn't care. They're, I swear, like the honey badger of the shrimp world. They just don't give a. I'm gonna hunt through the chats real fast. Make sure I haven't missed a question. So I'm gonna do my best to. Oh, she's not a monster, Chubby Guppy. She's just a baby. My old iguana was a monster. So I used to have back with my now ex, but my former girlfriend. We had two reptiles. We had a 9-foot long Burmese python. So, if you think that fox is a monster, think about a 9-foot python. You're talking about a snake that's this big around and weighs like, I think she weighed like 125 pounds. And she was heavy. She was a big girl. And then I also had a 6-foot iguana named Marty, who was like basically golden yellow his entire body. So like, notice how Fox, she has kind of a gray color up front. That's some of the green that's left over in her as a female. His whole body is golden yellow. There was no spots of green whatsoever. And then there's the dark like black bands in his tail, and that's it. One of the most gorgeous lizards I've ever seen in my life. And we used to walk him on a large cat harness like a dog in the summer. So we'd take him to dog parks, and we'd walk him in the leash only areas, which was super funny because dogs didn't know how to react to him. He's just giant dinosaur walking around basically, because 6 foot is not the full length if you include the full of tail. It's like from head to like the thick parts of the tail. So it's like the first half of the tail is 6 foot, and then there's like another 3 foot trailing of tail that's pretty thin and whippy. So he's a big boy. So if you think like the size Fox was, basically add like another 75%, and that's how big Marty was. He's a very, very large lizard. And he was like one of the most docile things known to man. It's so funny. He would just sit and sun himself all the time. We used to take him to this game store that I would go to all the time. And my now ex, but girlfriend at the time, her and I would go there, I think like twice a week, because it was kind of our hangout spot. And during the summer, the owner was like, "Oh yeah, you can bring the lizard," and he just sits on top of the bookshelf and suns himself. I don't care. And he was a big reptile guy, so like he loved having this big iguana in his shop. And most of the customers who knew, like, hey, if you're going to pet the iguana, wash your hands afterward. They have salmonella in their mouth. You don't want that. It's one of those things where, like, we taught the people who were the regulars. And then when people would come in and visit, if you had, like, little kids that wanted to pet him, he'd be on top of this, like, 6 foot tall bookshelf. So we would talk to them and be like, hey, yeah, let me bring him down. You can pet him, but then you need to go immediately to the bathroom and wash your hands afterward. And don't pet him again. Just because he likes a little bit of touch, but not too much. So yeah, it's one of those. Neighbor with an 8 foot alligator. No cage. Well, some people just like to flirt with death constantly, apparently. Albino orange iguana. I've been out of reptiles for a really long time, so that does not ring a bell. My ex was actually like the super reptile person, kind of like how my cousin is a big reptile person, and even his sister is a big reptile person. She has this giant bearded dragon that loves like just laying across her chest when she's hanging out and stuff. So I'll have to go look that up because that sounds really cool, and I like iguanas. The only thing is like I'm not big in albinos just because it's you're purposely fishing for defective genes that make their health typically less good. Yeah. I have seen the xanthic blue iguanas. Those are crazy cool looking. Crazy cool looking. Just north of the Ozarks. Ooh. Well, that's where there's some people out there. Yeah. They're like a cyan blue. They're so cool looking. I can remember back when we had our previous big iguana, we knew a guy who had what we called the blue iguana because it was the naturally occurring green, but had the very blue tone to its green. So it was kind of a like a teal color. And he never went into the breeding dress, which is like the orange and yellow colors. He just stayed that kind of teal color across his whole body. Such a cool looking lizard. So cool. And I imagine they probably took a lizard like that in order to slowly breed that cyan blue kind of color, because they don't often do that. Usually when they go in their breeding dress, they get yellows and oranges and reds and keep only little bits of green or no green whatsoever. Depends on how like hyper dominant the male is or the female and all those kind of things. There's just showing you random iguana knowledge that's still stuck in my brain somewhere from back when I kept iguanas. But anyway, 50 pothos rooted cuttings. Nice. That's always good. Like, selling pothos is great. Like, I like pothos quite a lot, and I should probably use it in more tanks, but it's one of those things where I don't want it crawling across my entire fish room unregulated, because it will in my house. So anyway, let's do we have I'll try and carry some last minute fish questions as we near almost 2 hours of stream, which is quite a long time for me. I'm normally an edited content guy, or like maybe an hour and a shot. And so if you have a couple last minute questions about fish, and don't try to troll me with stuff that I'm not an expert on, Andy. But I'll answer a couple of those, and then we'll probably wrap this bad boy up. I really appreciate you guys coming out. Like I said, this is kind of a spur of the moment thing, mostly because normally I would be here working on something or having a little bit of quality time with my lady. She's out visiting family down south of the state, basically, and so I have slight free time. So I decided, why the heck not? Let's do a live stream for fun. Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, Marsh Aquatics. I meant to answer your question. I totally forgot. Let me get David's real fast, and then I'll grab yours. 120 gallon planting tank, two 48-inch Fluval 3.0s, or two Kessel lights. Two Fluvals all day long. All day long. You're going to get what I would argue is better light coverage for money. Because the problem with Kessels is, one, they tend to, unless you are really good at dialing their light in, cause a lot of algae. It is really easy to dial the blue light spectrum down on a Fluval 3.0 than it is for a Kessel. So they're a little more user-friendly. Plus, they have the built-in timers. Kessels don't have built-in timers, at least not the affordable ones. And then, speak of Joel is here. So things like that. Those are the things that I would look at. But you know what? If you really want the aesthetic of a Kessel, I would say get an AI Prime. They're basically the same price point for a better light. It's kind of, if you really care about aesthetics, yeah, the Kessels are kind of pretty and you can hang them or you can gooseneck them, but all that costs extra money. The Fluval is like one shot. It's cheaper. It's better. It's more easy to use. It's one of those things where, like, I just feel like I don't feel like I was lying when I say that, bang for your buck, the Fluval is the best light on the market. The best. I can put a single 48-inch Fluval on a 140-gallon acrylic tank. That's a 5-foot by 24-inch tank, and it only needs one light to do medium light for the whole thing. There's a highlight spot kind of in the center and some low light spots at the outer edges, but that's where I put the low light plants. It's just, it's so crazy how good that light is. It's just insane how good that light is. And yeah, it's expensive compared to like a Beams work, but the quality difference, all the features, the warranty for one, like Kessels have a terrible warranty. If I'm paying $200 for a light and you're only giving me a 1-year warranty, in my world, F off. That's crazy. If I'm paying $200 for a light and I'm not getting a 5-year warranty, something's freaking wrong. At least a 3-year warranty. And that's part of the thing that I love about the Fluval. It's the only one that gives you a reasonable warranty. And what does that tell you? It means that they stand by the quality of the product. It's built better. It's just crazy. Now, if you want to go like the insane realm, you could go to like the UNS or the ADAs. Those things are bat-ass nice. But you're also talking like you would need two $500 lights to cover that tank. So now you're talking $1,000 a light when you could spend, what, $360? I'm going to spend $360 for a Wi-Fi capable light that has timers, ramp up, ramp down. I can control the light spectrum. I really don't think that I could possibly say enough good things about the quality of the hardware of the light. The only place where I will ever complain is the software. And that is just because there's so much more that you could do in that software with that piece of hardware that Fluval is choosing not to do. And there's probably some good reasons, and I don't want to bore you with that stuff. But plain and simple, yeah, get the Fluvals. Just do the Fluvals. It's so much better. Got a 4-foot Fluval 2.0 for $40. That's highway robbery. I mean, other than you can't like program it as much as the 3, it's still a super good light. Kessel makes stuff for the government. They don't care. It's super true, man. Okay, so copying Joel's sumps is probably a smart idea. I'm just gonna put that out there. I've seen them in person, and he'll babble at me, and half the time I'm like, "You don't have to convince me that hard, guy. I get it." The dude knows his stuff. So, Chubby Guppy mentioning that the Hawaiians are doing good in his hard water compared to my super soft water that they're used to. That's great. Okay, some other questions that I wanted to get to. So, any plans for the fry rack for the rainbows? So, I do have a fry rack currently kind of in part, but as far as like Dean's fry system, yes. The problem is, how do I put this? Forcing space. So I would either A, have to remove something like, say, my Shelly tank to put that in, or B, I would have to get to the point of where I can finally do my garage, which right now is not both A, in my budget, and B, I have too much of my mom's stuff in my garage right now, and she's fighting breast cancer, so I'm not going to tell her, like, hey, get your stuff out of my garage. I got to be a horrible frickin' son if I did that. Like, no, Mom, fight breast cancer. I got your stuff. Don't worry about it. You know, it's one of those things. But yes, I will actually build at least one of the fry systems, I'm hoping, after AGA. And that'll be another video with Dean where we'll sit down and Dean will actually do a full step-by-step of how to build one of the fry system. How to build the tank, how to set up the containers, everything. We'll do it step-by-step. I'll do a video. We'll edit that out. Hopefully Corey doesn't beat me to that punch. Please, Corey, don't beat me to the punch. But yeah, that is a plan in the future. I've already talked to Dean about it. He's on board. It's just a matter of us syncing our schedules up, getting the appropriate time to do that. And then also me then finding space to put the thing other than like, look, we built it. I'm going to put it in storage. You know, one of those things. I don't want to do that. I want to put it to use. So it's kind of a double trouble, if you will, of me doing some configuring and then also finding time to just sit down with Dean and get it done. Do I use root tabs under all rooted non-stem plants? Yes and no. Let me explain. When I first plant them, I definitely use root tabs. From there, what I'm typically doing is allowing a mulm layer and a little bit of the natural water column for it to pull into the substrate, because I use like things like fluval which are going to pull some of that stuff out of the water column down in because of the CEC capacity. And then letting them transition a little to rely on the water column. Every once in a while, I will go back, depending if I start seeing some kind of nutritional issue, that's when I will dose every once in a while, or about every 3 to 4 months, I will give one root tab to some of like my bigger swords, for example, just as kind of a boost. I can watch my camera wigging out because the light has changed, and it's kind of funny to me. My webcam is like being all sorts of weird. You can see, you would just watch like the way that the color flexes right here on this tank. It's kind of random thought. So Nathan, would I keep a pair or trio of pistols in pistos in the Fluval Flex? I think a pair of Apistos, especially if they're the smaller ones, like the Borellii, or even like the Cockatoides, is perfectly fine in a Fluval Flex. I just wouldn't keep too many other fish around. You might do like a small amount of dithers, like pencilfish or some neon tetras, but not a lot. There's not a lot of room in that tank for them to run should the Apistos feel super feisty. But I think if you wanted to do an Apisto only tank where you have a bunch of plants and then a couple spawning caves for a pair of Apistos to spawn and breed inside that, I think it's fine. Just make sure you go through and do that mod that's on Pectech's channel to block the gates for the intake of the far left-hand chamber. That way the fry don't go hiding in there or, you know, get trapped in there for an oblivion and never get food. So, yes. Short answer. I'm now like, I'm trying to keep up with chat, which means I gotta go stick down. One thing, Aeromask said something about the transparency of my content, and too many are kind of a big front. I think there are several people who are really good about being very transparent on their YouTube channels. Joel and I are probably two of the people who really value honesty, if that makes sense. Like, I've gone through enough stuff in my life that I've found that the people who've put up a facade are just, it's not worth your time. It's so much better to be honest and actually teach people than it is to like put up this facade that you're like the greatest like fish god known since the blessing of mankind or some nonsense like that. And that when you, you know, when a fish suddenly goes missing, that, oh no, nothing went wrong, I gave it to something or whatever. Be transparent. Everybody makes mistakes. We're human. We're flawed by nature. We screw up. If somebody looks to you and says like, that's a guy who really knows his stuff, but even he makes mistakes, it makes people not feel like they can't possibly do the fish hobby because they've made a mistake here and there. All of us make mistakes. Even the most diligent fish keepers and plant keepers make a mistake every once in a while. It's okay to have a mistake as long as you learn from that mistake. Now, if you don't learn from it, if you like, You get a fish, you don't probably take care of it. You buy that Oscar and you put him in a 10-gallon and it dies. So you buy another Oscar and you put him in a 10-gallon and it dies. Well, these must be bad fish. I'll go to a different place and I'll buy a different Oscar and put it into my 10-gallon and it dies. Oh, they're all sick fish. No, you're a terrible fish keeper. You're doing things wrong. Admit that you're the problem. If you don't admit that you're a problem, you never learn. That's been a lesson in my life for a very, very long time. It's how you get better at things as you admit to when you screw up and you learn from when you screw up. That's the important part of any hobby, anything, the working world especially. Like, we make mistakes in the working world, and I think the thing I hate the most about the working world is so many people are willing to huck someone else under the bus that probably were not the fault but might have had a small part to play in order to save their own butt, instead of realizing, like, hey, this is an opportunity to learn and show some moral character and moral fortitude and be like, hey, I screwed up, but I know how and I'm not going to do it again. Let me explain, so that everybody else doesn't make the same mistake I just made. I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, I'm a strange, crazy person like that. Joel's telling me to come down soon. I will when my schedule is, like, better. My schedule's really bad right now. I barely made my own live stream at my house, so there's that. I was actually, like, logged in answering questions on my phone using my voice to text for the first, like, 20 minutes before my stream while I was still driving home. Okay, I'll scroll down. Okay. So there was a comment about Gary Lang using the fry system that Lucas Bretz has been using. And I'd like to comment on that, because I don't, man, I'm already at 2 hours. Geez. I don't want to throw shade at Lucas because I think his idea is pretty good, but there is some problems with using that system in how soft the water is in Seattle, which it basically just leads to some particular problems with stabilizing the water the way that system is built, with how soft Washington water is, specifically the Seattle area water. So that's why something like Dean's system is actually significantly more successful here, because oddly enough, it's the one case where a smaller water system is more stable for you. Typically, the larger the water system, the better as far as keeping your parameters stable. This is a very rare case where the smaller system is actually better for us. And I could go into some weird details, but that can get really boring, and maybe it'll make a good video when we build Dean's system a little later in a couple of months here, I'm hoping. We'll see how schedules line up. It's a matter of, like, both mine and Dean's schedules not being super jerks is really what it comes down to. And it took us 3.5 months to get together for the first time, so that means it's going to take like 6.5 for the next one, right? It's just the problem of two busy people. So in hard water, I think that system is actually pretty good, as long as you make the modifications Gary has made. Specifically for rainbow fish, I think there's some small risks in Lucas's system that they could get in and fly down the tubes, and the second they start flying down the tubes and going toward the sump portion, they're dead. It's too much water turbulence. You're going to lose 99% of the fry that fall that way. Gary's made some modifications to prevent against that, and that's one of the things I'm actually going to talk to Gary about at AGA, because I want to find out his results and his findings using that system in his water. So, and hopefully we probably won't film that, just because it's probably a really long conversation, and I promised Gary that I wouldn't take too much of his time. So, but it might be one of those things where I talk with him, and then go from there. Yes, he uses RO water, but you won't use RO water with rainbows. You need the hardness in the water for rainbows. I have to buffer all my water up for rainbows, and even doing so, controlling the buffered water in a system like that is a little strange. So that just, it's kind of a complicated conversation. I can't do it in like a quick rundown rod. So I would if I could. It's one of those things where, like, it takes me, he's remineralizing RO water to a specific content. I don't use RO. I have a base water that is extremely soft, has no calcium in it whatsoever. It has a little bit of iron and a little bit of chlorine. And then beyond that, it's 28 TDS out of the tap. It's like basically RO, but I'm not remineralizing it. So I'm doing some other things, and it just makes it a little easier to control in something like a 20 long with Dean's fry system than it is in that big rack system that Lucas has set up. It's a basically controlling it more acutely to get better survival rates for my particular style, and also just because the way that my schedule is, I'm not working out of my home as a business like Lucas is. He can pay a lot more attention to those things. That's the other, like, probably the major thing is that he has a schedule that allows him to pay a lot of attention, where my schedule has me spending 10 to 11 hours of my day either in traffic or at work. And I come home and I have a very short window of time before I'm like, I need to go pass out so I can get up and work again. It's just the difference of how our working lives are. I will answer your question, Martial Aquatics, in a sec. There's something else I wanted to try and grab. Forgive me as I scroll. Oh, okay. So Sakana Katana, what a great name, and I quite appreciate that. So you're going to a fish auction for the first time Sunday. Any advice? Number one piece of advice would be just keep in mind to make sure you have a quarantine system if you can. Always quarantine a fish, even if it comes from a fish club. It's just safer that way. If you can't, like, try not to spread too many new fish to too many tanks, just to sort of minimize your risk. And then finally from there, like, don't feel like if you see something you like that you have to take that one thing home, unless it's something you've been looking for a couple of years and haven't been able to find. Don't spend too much money. Like, the best part about fish auctions is that usually you're getting good deals. And don't, like, force yourself into something. Like, the example I will give you is when Gary Lang came to my club, I went in there knowing I was probably going to drop like $600, because I'd been waiting a year and a half for that meeting, and that's fine. But when you go to, like, a more general auction at a fish club, like, things like getting 20 guppies for $1, or getting this great plant, like a big 2-pound bag of plants for like $4 and things like that. That's kind of what you're hoping for. That's what you want to shoot for. You want those super sweet deals, or just the things that, like, you get them from a good, reputable local breeder, so it's the same roughly water that you have. Just don't go too crazy, I guess, is really try to have some self-control. Don't buy all the things, just buy some of the things. Holy moly, Mosh Aquatics put down payment on rainbow eggs for Wanamensis. Well, it's going to be a while on them, but that'll be one of those things where, like, I will let people know either via the community tab, which if you guys for some reason aren't subscribed, I'm pretty sure all of you are. Be subscribed and have the notifications just so you hit the community tab, because that's where you actually get the most power. Part of the reason why I don't do Patreon, which I'm sure that there was to be some people that will yell at me that I should, just from a perspective of, if you ever want to upgrade things, it's a way to afford them eventually. I don't do it because I don't ever want it to feel like your ability to influence the content I create requires payment. I as a both consumer of YouTube and producer of content on YouTube, like giving power to people at no cost. You're already giving me your time. That is the most precious thing you could possibly give me. I don't get a lot of free time, so I fully recognize that free time is precious. And our time to dedicate, there's so many great content creators on YouTube. The fact that you guys want to spend time with my crazy rainbow loving butt, I think that you should be able to influence that channel without any cost. Now, if you choose to, for the creators who, like, I support a couple of creators. I totally love doing it because I want to see them keep making content. I love the content they do. And it's my way to just say, like, hey, I really appreciate what you do. But that being said, me personally, my goal is to make sure that you guys, and for those of you who've been voting in the community polls, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I want you to be able to always influence the content I do. Now, granted, that's not like, I want to see a video about Oscars. I'm like, I don't keep Oscars. I'm not going to do a video on Oscars that's going to be anywhere near good. Like, Oscars are not my jam. But, giving you guys the choice, like when I have 5 different video ideas or 5 different things I'm working on, telling you like, okay, which ones do you want to see first? Or which one should I focus on? That's the power that I want to give you guys. Because I think that if I just do things willy-nilly, I'm not serving you guys' best interest. Like, part of my goal in YouTube is, 1, have fun because this is fun to me. And 2, I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the light wigging out because my better light went out. Anyway, giving you guys the opportunity to choose the educational content you want, because that's the thing that I really focus on, is the educational side, and trying to spread like what modicum of knowledge I have. It's very specialized, but I've got some. I think is important, because I think that if the more good fish keepers we can have, the better our hobby is overall. And people like hiding their knowledge away in like little fiefdoms and not spreading it is just foolhardy if you ever want your hobby to grow and become bigger and better. If you ever want to prevent, like, governments from saying like, you're no longer allowed to keep these fish because we think that that's bad for the fish. Like, well, no, if it's not for all these hobbyists, a lot of these fish wouldn't exist anymore. They'd be extinct in the wild. It's because of us they're still around. You should probably let us keep those fish. I'm not saying legalize arowana, but I'm saying legalize arowana. The stupid CITES in the United States. But, things like that. I think that it's perfectly fine that each creator has their own kind of opinions. And I think like Patreon is a perfectly fine platform, or like the join button that eventually happens on YouTube. I'm way too small for that, so I don't have to worry about it. But, those membership things are great. And I think having extra content for those kind of people is really good. But I think when it comes to the primary content, like someone like me who's really trying to do like a video a week just because my schedule is so crazy, I think that giving you guys the power of that content should be free. It should not be anything that has to be paid for, because you guys are giving me your time, and your time is precious. My time is precious. Your time is precious. We should respect both of each other by working together on that, right? I think that's perfectly fair. So there's my crazy philosophical tangent about why I do things the way I do, and why, if you're a subscriber, you should definitely have the little bell thingamajigger rang so that you can see the community posts, because a lot of that gives you guys the control over what I produce. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Your ability to determine what you want to see out of me is in that community tab pretty regularly. I like putting up polls because I like hearing what you guys think. When you guys give me comments, I really do pay attention to them. I don't always respond to every single one, but if there's a question, I try to respond to everyone on a video. If you see the little heart, it means I definitely read and paid attention to your comment. It's not just like, oh, I just heart every comment that shows up. Occasionally I get a negative one, and they don't get hearts because, let's not be jerks. We can all be nice. It's fine to at least be polite. But that's that. Long, giant tangent. You guys are having great conversations in chat. I just want to put that out there. This is like the weird part for me is normally I'm in chat, like typing away like, furiously when I'm not like neck deep in tests at work or something. Slight problem. Uh-oh. 60 tanks, all rainbows. Wow, you have like more tanks than me, and you want eggs from me? I'm pretty sure I need to talk to you about what you're keeping, Marsh Aquatics, because it sounds like you probably have some stuff I don't have. And Chubby Guppy, definitely there are a few people in St. Louis who actually watch, and if I ever do get an opportunity to go down there, I'm definitely hooking up with all you guys, and most certainly going to Gary's place. By hook or by crook, I'm going to make him let me in. Probably some kind of bribe like, I will buy fish from you, Gary, let me in. Oh, Lord. Anyway. So yeah, we've gone for 2 hours and almost 15 minutes. I think I've earned dinner. Can you guys let me say I've earned dinner now? So Rod, let me. I will answer this question actually because I think it's pretty good. For me, it's really hard if if how can I put this? I want to say this correctly because I'm worried I'm going to say it poorly. It's very hard in my typical schedule for me to actively live stream. This is kind of a test of something where I might do like a live stream a month. And I know that's like, hey, wait a minute, we want a weekly one. It's just a matter of I only get so much time after work to both spend time with my lady, kind of check up on all my fish tanks and my fish and my plants, and then also create content for you guys. So usually on a Tuesday night, I would be laying out some of my initial footage for a video, but because I did all of that Monday, and I was kind of ahead of the game this weekend, getting some other stuff laid out ahead of time so that I could finish the edits last night on the video for Saturday and start the process of the kind of the next video as well. That's kind of the only reason why I have the spare time. Also, my lady's out of town, so the time that I would be paying attention to her, I'm paying attention to you guys. So as often as my lady goes out of town, we could definitely have a live stream. But it'd be one of those things where I think if I can, if I like the general feel of this, we might do a semi longer live stream like once a month. I just once a week is probably really hard to fit into my schedule and also make sure that I'm reliably delivering at least a weekly video to you guys and possibly setting up some other stuff just to get you guys what I tend to prefer, which is edited educational content or just occasionally like project updates on the crazy nonsense I'm doing in my house. And it's probably a good thing that I found a significant other who likes fish and isn't like going, what is this crazy man doing in his home? Why am I with him? But yeah, so that's to answer you guys in a long answer there. That's kind of why, will I do more streams? Sure. That's probably something I can do semi irregularly. It won't be like the regularity of say like Friday Fish Facts, who does a weekly stream that's freaking awesome and he always has great guests. I certainly can't do the like 3 times a week that Joel does because that man is a crazy man monster. But yeah, it'll probably be something like maybe once a month is what I'm going to try and target. This was literally a test to see like how good I felt about going through a live stream and kind of if I felt like I could get an hour of content with you guys versus 2 hours, over 2 hours, which is really surprising to me. I was thinking I might be struggling toward the end of an hour, but you guys have been super active, asked lots of questions, and I've gone on so many tangents that have gone way out into left field. So we filled the time quite well. But yeah, so steel blue-gray signifiers. That sounds really familiar, but off the top of my head, I can't picture them. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, so yeah, live streams are kind of a different relationship. I used to live stream in the gaming realm a long time ago, but the squirrel. Yeah, it's one of those things. Oh, 3 hours, dear Lord, man. I'm too sleep deprived for 3 hours, and then to try and figure out the rest of the stuff I'm supposed to do for the night. If you guys want me to regularly put out videos, 3 hours is. Yeah, it'd have to be like a Saturday or Sunday, and I'd have to not be busy that weekend. So there's that. A Tuesday night after work or whatever, probably not going to happen. Just as a heads up. And also, like one thing is, I try not to trample over the schedules of other people. Like I think isn't Pam streaming tonight, Candy, or is she still like off of streams because she's still recovering? Which I would hope she's taking time to recover quite well. But like I don't want to like trample over some other people's live streams who I think do really good live streams. I think the biggest thing is that the reason why I took so long to ever do was it Friday night? Okay, well that's good news. The reason why I took so long to ever do a live stream is because I feel like there are a lot of very good live streamers already, even if their channels are smaller, who are doing kind of entertaining content that I'm not necessarily bringing something unique to the table other than my difference of experience. Which is just that I'm a crazy rainbow nerd and and also occasionally very good at plants. But yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like a great example would be like Friday Fish Facts. When are you going to do like a guest on your live stream? Other than like maybe my cousin for fun, or like my roommate walking in with Fox. Yeah, I think that he does such a good job, and there are other people that do such good jobs that that's the space they should own, and I shouldn't like. I don't know that I'm bringing something new and unique to that. I kind of want to be able to serve something that's, I guess you'd say, a little different. I want to be able to provide something that's not the same that someone else is doing, but more different and unique, and not necessarily like it has to be the one person ever only doing it, but more just I don't want it to feel like something someone else is doing, because if they're already doing it, I want them to keep doing it and be successful at it. I don't want to like trample into someone's space and be like, I'm going to do what you're doing now. I don't want to ever have that feeling in the back of my head. And I know it's not like, well, but you're a completely different person. You have different experiences, blah, blah, blah. It's one of those things that like the moral side of me, like way back there, is like, no, like let's be good people. There's plenty of room for lots of different content creators. Let's let other people do that stuff, and I'll keep my edited content going. It's one of those things. That's just kind of the way that my brain works. And yeah. Anywho, so thank you guys very, very much for showing up. I've really had a lot of fun, despite talking way longer than I thought I was ever going to be able to go. So that's pretty cool. You guys are great. Tails is just like flapping around in the background. That's always good. So I will say this. I hope for those of you going to AGA that I get an opportunity to sit down and talk with each and every one of you, see your wonderful smiling faces, and associate a face with a screen name that I get to see. And if you didn't see the secret somewhere in a recent video about AGA, maybe go back and look at those. I'm not saying that it means that there might be something free. That's just a thing. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for showing up, interacting, having fun, watching, and as always, stay awesome.